Alright, so in today's tutorials, we want to look at how to do exploratory data analysis using SPSS. So to start with, we have to know how we can import our data set. I have done separate video on how to import different data files in SPSS, so you can go watch that before you jump into this. So we are going to make use of the iris data set, which we have already used in our previous tutorials. So first of all, let's scroll to the open data document on the menu of our window editor. Right, so let's click on this. So which also comes with a window for us to basically select or locate the folder where we have our data file. So I have my data file in here, so you have to just search. You can scroll to desktop, document, or downloads. Where you have a data file, you just have to basically search for that. I have mine in here, so I'm going to maintain this. The next step is to scroll to the file type, right this, and just choose all files. So I'm scrolling down to all files. So I'm choosing all files, and I'm going to make use of this iris data set, which has the CSV extension. So I'm going to click on that and open. Okay, so let's open. Alright, so we have to follow some instructions before we can view our data set. So the first thing says that does your text file match a predefined format? Let's leave it as no and click on next. Alright, so in this session, leave this side as default. Okay, now in this side there's a question, are variable names included at the top of your file? Now you can see the preview in this session that we can see that the first row is made up of variable names. So let's indicate this place as yes, right? If there are no variable names, then you can check no. Okay, so now let's click on next to proceed. Okay, in this session, let's leave everything as default. Okay, and click on next to proceed. Okay, the same applies here. Let's leave everything as default and click on next to proceed. Alright, so here too, there's a fifth step. Let's leave everything as default and click on next to proceed. Alright, so there's the last part. Let's leave everything as default and click on finish. I'm going to leave this data file in the description of the video so that you can basically download and upload it. Okay, so click on finish to end it. Finish. Alright, so once you open this data file, which has been displayed in a spreadsheet form in the data view window, it also comes with an output window where you can see most of your results from your analysis. Okay, so we'll be making use of this very soon. Let's go back to our window editor. So this is the iris data set, which was basically introduced by Ronald Fisher. The data set consists of 50 samples, right, from each of the 3 species of the iris plant. We have Setosa, we have Versicolor, and the last one is Virginica. Okay, so 4 features or 4 variables were measured from each sample, which include a sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width. And based on the combination of these 4 features or variables, Fisher developed a linear discriminant model to distinguish the species from each other. So this is the data set that we want to use for the exploratory data analysis. So the first thing that we have to do before we start with exploratory analysis is to basically prepare our data. Data preparation is something that's very important. It is all about cleaning the data so that the data is ready to be used for model building phase or to be used for analysis. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to be looking at is to check for missing values. Fortunately for us, in this preview of our data set, you can see that the first um, this side we have some missing values, right? Sometimes there's no need for you to scroll to be checking for the missing values. There's a way to basically do this, but before we proceed, you can also look at the variable view. Okay, there's a variable view, so you can click on that to basically restructure a data set. You can see that for sepal the length, it is numeric, right? If you look at the first 4 variables, sepal length, petal sepal width, petal length, and petal width, they are all in the ratio scale of measurement, which are basically numeric, right? And that of the species is strength. So we have a nominal variable here. So this is where you can restructure your variables to basically make use of it. Okay. So let's go back to our data view. So as I was saying, the first thing that we have to do before we start with exploration analysis is to prepare our data. So we are going to basically start with missing values. How do we check for missing values from our data set? So we are going to click on Analyze, which is located on the menu of our window editor. So let's click on Analyze and scroll to Descriptive Statistic, choose Frequencies. Okay. So once you do that, we are going to select all these variables. So let's highlight everything and drop it in this box. So let's use this button to pull it. Okay. So let's scroll down and uncheck this box. Uncheck this. Right. Okay. Uncheck this. Then let's press on or click on OK to proceed. Okay. So in our output window, we see frequencies, right? And we can see that for sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width, they all have 1 missing observations, and the valid observations are 149. So in total, we have 150 observations, right? And for species, there's no missing value. So how do we deal with missing values? There are two ways. If the number of missing values are not significant or they are not too many, then you can basically delete those rows or entries with missing values sometimes. But the best approach is basically to use the data imputation method, whereby we replace each of the missing values with the average of the values for each variable. Okay, so how do we do the data imputation? You can go to transform, which is on the menu of our window editor. So let's click on that and scroll to replace missing values. Actually, we are not going to use this method, by the way, but I just want to show you how you can do this. So these are the values or the variables with missing values, so we can highlight on them. Right, let's highlight on them and pull it in this new box. So let's use this button. Okay, so by default, the method that it is going to use to replace the missing value is the series mean. You can change this if you wish. So once I click on it and scroll down, I can change the method. We have different methods. We have a mean using the median, using the linear interpolation, and also linear trend at point. For parametric text, you can make use of the mean value. For non-parametric text, you can make use of the median value. Okay, I'm going to explain this test and this concept as we proceed in our subsequent tutorials. So if I want to make use of the mean, I can just click on this and click on change to see the results. So it means that for the variable sepal length, it's going to replace the missing value with the average, which is the mean value. Okay, so if you want to use the median, right, you can also click on that, but it must be the same method throughout. So if you are using the mean, then use the mean. It should be consistent. Okay, but I just want to show you how you can do this. For median, you can just click on that and also click on change so that you can see the result. Okay, we are not going to use this method by anyway, so I'm going to close this. Okay, so the method that I want to use is just to delete the entry with missing value, because I can see that it's just one, right? It's just one entry where the missing values are, and seeing this is something that is not significant. Okay, just reducing one of the entry will not affect my analysis as right. So fortunately for us, we can see the missing value in this part. Sometimes the missing value, you may have one in this side, you may have one at a different side, you may have one at even in a different entry. So you wouldn't like to be using the left click to highlight and basically clear. You want to basically have a function which can basically locate where the missing values are so that you can delete those entries. So how do we do that? Let's scroll to the data on the menu of our window editor, right, and click on it. So let's scroll to select cases and click on that. So in select cases, we are going to use a condition to basically replace our missing or to delete our missing values, right? The entries with missing values. So let's click on the if condition. Right, so we need a function known as missing values. So let's look for that function. So I'm looking for the missing value function that I want to use to delete those entries. Right, so let's make use of nmiss, number of missing values. This is what we are going to use to basically help us delete those entries with missing values. So nmiss, right, and I'm going to pull these variables in this parenthesis. So let me click on this and drop it in. Click on that. We can bring a comma, then do the same for the next variable. Right, do that. Then we have the other side. Okay, drop it, separate with a comma. So I'm going back comma. Okay, then let's drop the last one in. So yep, so we are good to go. So we want to say that the number of missing values should be less than 1. Okay, this is the condition that we want to use. And if it's a count variable or count values, then we know that if it is less than 1, then automatically if each of these variables has a value which is 0, that's what it basically means. If it is less than 1 means if any of these variables has any value which is less than 0, we want it to be deleted. Okay, so we are good to go. So let's now click on continue to proceed. Alright, so there's the output that we want to see. We can either filter out the unselected cases. So you realize that once I click on OK, it's going to ignore this entry. So let's click on OK. So let's go back to our data editor. So we see that the observation number 14 has been it's not selected, right? It has filtered this out. So if I want to use this for my analysis, it is basically going to ignore this one. It's not going to make use of this, right? So because this is not important to us, we can use the left click and clear, right? Just clear this, right? And we can also basically use this to basically clear this. We don't need this variable, so let's clear. Okay, so I think one way you could have also deleted those entries was you can go back, use the recent dialog and click on select cases. So instead of filtering it out, you can also use delete unselected cases, which can also delete it instead of using the let's click to delete it yourself. Okay, so let me close this. So we are done with the first part of the data preparation, which is to check for missing values. The next step is to basically check for duplicate entries. Okay, sometimes we have some values which has been recorded twice or more than twice. So how do we check for duplicate values? Let's click on data on the menu of our window editor and choose identify duplicate cases. Okay, so let's click on this. Alright, so in here I'm going to select let's select all these variables. So I'm going to highlight on everything and drop it in this box. So let's use this. Alright, let's scroll down. So basically we have an indicator of primary cases, which is 1 for the original entry. Then the entry which comes again will be considered as duplicate. It will be assigned 0. So yeah, the last case in each group is going to be the primary, and the first case will be considered as a duplicate. I don't want it this way, I want it the other way around. The first case in each group should be considered as a primary, and the last one should be considered as a duplicate, which will rather be assigned the number 0. Then I want to filter by the indicator value, so I want to basically delete those duplicate values. So I want to filter those duplicate values, right? Then the next step is to, let's see this, let's scroll down. So this box, this is basically going to move the matching cases to the top of your file, right? So those values that are duplicates will be on top of your it will appear on top of your data editor, right? So that's what this box is going to do. Then we can also display frequencies for the created variables if we want to. So let's basically click on OK to proceed. Okay, so let's scroll down and see the result. So we can see that we have 149. It was 150, but because of missing value, we deleted one, so it's left 149. And in the 149, we have one duplicate, right? And so now the original cases with the primary cases is now 148, right? So let's go back to our window editor. All right, so we can see that it has pulled those duplicates on top of our window editor, right? So we can see that the primary case has been indicated here, which has been assigned a value 1. We can click on this to see the labels. So we can see that 1 is for the unique values, and 0, that the second entry will be considered as a duplicate. So it has filtered this out, so this will not be used anymore. So instead of having 149 observations, we now have 148 observations. This will not be considered anymore. So this is the duplicate. Once you use the label value labels, you can see the changes. Okay, so we can basically delete this entry with the duplicate. We don't need it. So let me use a left click and clear. We can also clear this. We don't need it. So let's clear this. Alright, so we now have 148 observations. The last thing that we want to do before we proceed to the exploratory analysis is to basically assign labels to these levels of the species. We can see if I use the value labels, I don't see any changes, right? We have to ensure that we assign numbers to them, okay? For in order to um, have our computation done easily, most of the software doesn't require strings. We have to basically encode or recode this so that we assign values to this categorical variable. As I've already explained in our previous tutorial, that anytime we have categorical variable or nominal variable, for instance, we can assign numbers to them. And the purpose of assigning these numbers is to distinguish between the categories, which helps or facilitating um, easier computation. Okay, strings will not be appropriate. So how do we recode or how do we assign values to these labels? So let's click on transform on the menu of our window editor and scroll to automatic recode. Yep, so let's click on this and let's see what we can do. So we want to recode this. Let's pull it in this box and let's give it a new name. We don't want the original name, so let's say this should be species 1, right? So that's a new name, and click on add new name to have the refresh. So instead of species, we are now having species 1, right? And we want the record to start from the lower value to the highest, or we can also have the record start from the highest value. So with the lowest value, it's basically going to assign um, 1 to Setosa, which is the first label, and 2 to Versicolor, which is the second label, and 3 to Virginica, which is the third label. You can rechange this if you wish. I want to maintain it as lowest value. Then I think we are good to go. So we can click on OK to proceed. Okay. So let's see what happens. So here we go. Let's scroll down. Okay, so we can see that in here one has been assigned to sorry, let me scroll down. One has been assigned to Setosa, to Versicolor, and 3 to Virginica, right? This was the old one, and these are new value in the new label. So let's go back to our window editor and see the effect. So here we go, we can see that here, once I click on the value labels, I can see the changes now. 1 has been assigned to Setosa, 3 has been assigned to Virginica, and 2 has been assigned to Versicolor. Once I click on it, I see the effect. Okay, so I don't need this. I want to make use of this, right? So I can just let's click on this and clear. All right. So I think we are good to go now. Okay, so one more thing that we have to look at is data filtering. Sometimes you don't want to make use of all the values or all the entries. You want to make use of some specific values in your data set. So data filtering is very important. Maybe for instance, we want to just select Setosa and Virginica for all these variables. How do we do that? Data filtering is very key. So how do we do that? Let's quickly look at this before we proceed to our main task, which is the exploratory analysis. So let's go to data on the menu of our window editor. Let's click on this and scroll down to the select cases. So I'm going to click on this. Alright, so let's use the if condition. Alright, so let's clear this. We don't need this anymore. Okay, I'm going to highlight everything and clear. Alright, so I want to use a condition. I want to pick species. I want to select, drop it in this box. I want to select one, which is Setosa. Don't forget, we have assigned one to Setosa in our recording. And I'm going to use the operation or this, right? Or we want to select the species variable. Let's pull it again inside the box. We want 3, right? That is species label 3, which is Virginica. This is what we want for all our variables. So I think we are good to go. So this part, we are trying to filter only the Setosa and Virginica for all the variables. Okay, so let's click on continue to proceed. So let me click on okay, so the output, how do we get our output? We can basically filter out down selected cases, or we can copy the selected cases to a new data set. This is what I want us to make use of. So we want to give it a new name. Let's say data filter 1, right? So let's click on OK to proceed now. Okay, so let's see our data filter. So here we go, this is our data filter 1, right? That's the name. So we can see that this one has only 98 observations, right, instead of 148. And if you click on these value labels, we have only 1 and 3, right? You can see only 1 and 3 for all the variables. Now, assuming we want to also add another condition whereby we want the sepal length values to be greater than 5, you can see that some of them are below 5, right? So let's assume we want some of the values to be greater than 5. For this same condition, we want the sepal length values to be greater than 5. Let's go back to our original data set. So this is my original data set, right? And let's use the open recent dialog. Right, so let's click on this and go to select cases. Let's go back to the if condition. So I want to add another condition to this. So let's see how we can do this. Let me add another condition to this. So I want to say now, and we want the sepal length value. So let me click on this and drop it in the box to be greater than 5. Right, so let's click on continue to see the effects. Okay, so let's give it a new name in here. Right, let's say this should be data filter 2. Right, that's the output that we want to see. Click on OK to proceed. Now let's see our data filter 2. Here we go. So we can see now the observations is going to change. Let's use control down arrow. So we now have 70 observations out of 89, because now I have added another condition which says that the sepal length value should be greater than 5. So we don't see any value which is below 5 as we saw in our data filter 1. Alright, so let's assume now we don't want to make use of all these observations, right? I want to make use of some of the variables and even some of the observations as well. Let's assume I want only this and that. I don't need this and that. So how do we delete? Just use left click and clear this, left click and clear this variable. So you now have only these two variables, right? And let's say we also want to make use of the first 50 observations. There's no need for you to be using left click to be deleting this. So let's go back. Let's use the recent dialog and click on this, select cases, and come to scroll to the based on time or case range. Right, so let's click on range. So now let's say we want the first row, or let's say we want the 10th to the 60th observations. We don't want any other. So let's click on continue and scroll down to continue. Okay, so what do we see? Let's scroll up. So we see that it has filtered this one, right, it has filtered this one, and if we scroll down, it has also taken this off, so this will not be used, right? So this is basically how to filter out some of your data sets for analysis. So we are not going to make use of this. Let's go back to our original data. So I think we are good to go.